Okay, we want to solve this. Now, the way we're going to write this out, we're going to put the system in a set of brackets. And we're going to number the rows of this system 1 and 2. And everybody did pretty well with this. Okay? Now, do, let's say 2 times row 1, negative 3 times row 2. And that's going to match up the x coordinates. Note that we also could have matched up the y coordinates. If you've been doing the assignments, you understand this. And it looks like I've been doing the assignments because this is coming out pretty good. We could multiply this one by 4 and this one by 5. Eliminate y if we wanted to, right? So you don't always have to eliminate x. You pick the variable that has the simplest numbers to eliminate it, okay? But we're going to go ahead and eliminate x. We're going to get 6x minus 10y equals 2. Multiplying everything by 2. And here we're going to get negative 6x minus 12y equals negative 24. And that's not what, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, so that's good. Now we go ahead and add row 1. Sorry, we'll copy down row 1 here, and we'll add row 1 and row 2. It's going to give us 6x minus 10y equals 2, and 0x minus 22y equals minus 22. Doesn't come out at all the way I thought it would. I don't know. Anyhow, it's going to work. Okay, now this is a little different than what we might have done previously. Previously, we would have just written down this equation and solved for y, plugged it into the first equation, and got an x. Okay, so at this stage, if that's what you did, that's great. If you didn't quite get to that point, well, I think everybody got to this point. The next thing we're going to do, we're not going to isolate this and solve it. We're also going to write the 0x here, and you'll see why we do that. We're going to do row 2 divided by negative 22. So we're going to write row 1 again. And we're going to divide this second row by 2. 0 divided by 2 is still 0. And we still write the 0x. 22, negative 22y divided by 22 gives us y. And negative 22 divided by negative 22 gives you 1. Oh, yeah. Solve for y. Y was supposed to be 1, x wasn't. I don't know what else. Okay, so let's copy this down up here so we can continue it. Okay, so we have again 6x minus 10y equals 2, and 0x minus plus y equals 1. It's not minus y, it's plus y. So again, this is just a copy of what we got down here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add row 1 to 10 times row 2. Why would we do that? Well, because if we add 10y to negative 10y, we eliminate y. So this will eliminate y. We're going to get 6x plus 0y. And 10 times row 2 is 10. 10 added to 2 gives us 12. And we're going to have 0x plus y equals 1. Okay, now you might or might not have seen a step like this, but you understand. First, we eliminate x, we get a 0x here. Then we want just a y here. A 0x and a y. That's going to give us our solution for y. So we just divide this equation by the coefficient of y, and there we have it. Now we want to find x. So it would be good if we could eliminate y from this equation, and we just did. And we don't change row 2. Once we have row 2 in this form, we keep it that way. All right. Okay, now next thing we do is want to find x. Well, that's going to be pretty easy. We just divide row 1 by 6, and we get x plus 0y equals 2. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 gives us 2. And we have now 0x plus y equals 1. And this is equation 2, of course. And at this stage, we can then write the two equations. So x plus 0y is 2. So just, we no longer then, when we bring it out of the brackets, we don't write the 0y anymore. So x equals 2. And 0x plus y equals 1. Or just y equals 1. So our solution set, our solution is debating about how to write it. I'll write this as x equals 2, y equals 1. That corresponds to the point intersection 2, 1. We could graph these two equations and estimate the point of intersection. If we graph it exactly, we're going to end up with two lines crossing at the point 2, 1. So that's pretty much what we need to understand about this system. Now, there's a slightly shorter way of solving this system. Okay. we're going to represent the system by an augmented matrix. What I mean by an augmented matrix, it's just the same as what we have here, except we don't write the X, we don't write the Y's, and we don't write the equal sign. We don't need them. We just operate on the numbers. And you'll see how that works in a minute. We're going to do exactly the same operations. And the augmented matrix is just going to be 3, -5, 1, 2, 4, 8. And I'm going to put a dotted line here. It's understood that this, okay, you got 2 rows in this matrix. Here's a row, here's a row. We've got 3 columns. This column with the 3 and the 2 stands for the coefficients of X. So it's just understood there's an X here and an X here. The second column stands for the Y's. Okay, it's understood there'll be a Y here and a Y here, but we don't write them. And then it's understood that the dotted line here represents equal signs. Okay, so it's just another way of writing this. It's a little shorter. We don't have to keep writing X and Y. We just operate on the numbers. Okay, well, what operation do we do on these numbers? We're going to do exactly the same thing we did before. Okay, now I'm going to write down the operations that we used. Try to write this on a clean sheet of paper. If you're taking notes on this, put them away. That doesn't mean you got to go, hide them someplace. Just maybe turn the page or something. Okay. But without using the notes, we're going to start with this matrix and we're going to do these operations. Okay. And we're not going to look at the results we got here until we're done. Then we're going to look at the results and see if they match up. Okay, so we're going to have 1 here, and we're going to have row 2 divided by 22. And then we're going to have one plus 10 times row 2 and 2. And then we're going to have row 1 divided by 6 and row 2. Those are the operations. Now I'm going to put this so we can't see it. And I'm going to be actually just set it down here for the time being. And I'll move this over so it's a little easier for everybody to see. And then I'll keep an eye on you in case you make a mistake. I'll try to get you back on track. But again, we're doing exactly the same thing with these operations. With correction, I did put a negative in this 22, so it's a negative 22. But Okay, everybody did quite well with it. There were a few mistakes, but not many. Okay, so look at this, 2 times row 1, right? 2 times 3, 2 times -5, 2 times 1. Over here, so I don't block the boards badly. So 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times -5 is -10. And 2 times 1 is 2. And you got -3 times row 2. -3 times 2, -3 times 4, -3 times 8. -3 times 2 is -6. -3 times 4 is -12. -3 times 8 is -24. Okay. Then we just write down row 1. Okay. So we look back and write down the row 1 from the previous step. And then we add row 1 to row 2. 6 plus -6 is 0. -10 and -12 is -22. 2 and -24 is -22. Now, we again keep row 1. Let's write it down. 6, -10, 2. Add 2. Let's try again. It's even worse. Okay, and then row 2 divided by -22. Okay, well, here's row 2. 0 divided by -0 divided by anything is 0. Anything other than 0. -22 divided by -22 is 1. You divide a number by itself, it's 1. We don't need a calculator to do that, although if you want to confirm it, you can. Okay, -22 divided by -22 is 1. So there we are. And we understand that this tells us that y equals 1, because this means 0x plus 1y equals 1, right? Now, so we've got a solution for y. We're going to continue and get a solution for x. Okay. We're going to do row 1 plus 10 times row 2. Now, don't make the mistake of doing row 1 plus 10, because you never do that. You never add a number to a row when you do this. Plus, you have the order of operations, multiplication before addition. Nobody made a mistake like that. I've seen mistakes like that in other classes, so you want to be careful. Okay. Well, row 1 has a 6. Row 2 has a 0. 10 times the number in row 2 is 0. Add that to 6 and you still get 6. Okay. In this column, number in row 1 is -10. Number in row 2 is 1. Multiply 10 times the number in row 2, you get 10. Add that to -10, you get 0. And then row 1 has 2. And row 2 has 1. 10 times the row 2 number would be 10 times 1, which is 10. Add that to row 1 number, which is 2, and you get 12. Then we divide row 1 by 6, and write down row 2, and we're finished. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 0 divided by 1 is 0. 12 divided by 1 is 2. Now, the equation form of the system is x plus 0y equals 2. 0x plus 1y equals 1. And that could just be written as x equals 2, y equals 1. Okay. It turns out that's the same solution we got previously. If we compare step 1, 2, 3, we're using exactly the same steps. So that when we get down to the third step, there it is. Okay, we got 6, -10, and 2, we got 6, -10, and 2. We've got 0, -22, -22, same thing here. Now, in the next step, we're gonna have we get 6, -10, 2. Well, next step is here. It's 6x minus 10y equals 2. It's 0, 1, 1 in the second row, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Identical. And then everything continues to be identical. Have to rearrange these boards slightly because they don't correspond exactly. Okay. So, well, again, here is this one rewritten. Again, it corresponds just as we saw before. And then we have here 6, 0, 12. Well, here's 6, 0, 12, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, y, 1. Okay. And actually, well, I'm not going to do that. Okay, then when we divide by 6, we get 1, 0, 2, just like we got 1x, 0y, and 2, 0, 1, 1, 0x, and a 1y, and a 1. And it interprets exactly the same two equations, exactly the same solution. Okay, and that should be no surprise. And everybody worked through this quite quickly and I think understands the correspondence. Okay, so y'all did very well there. A couple little errors, so you gotta get rid of those errors, which means that you've got to check. Let me just remind you that we have to check. Because it is likely that when you work some of these, you're gonna make errors. Very easy. I mean, I made one when I wrote down the instruction here, I didn't put the negative in front of the 22. Some of y'all called me on that, and some of y'all just used the negative 22, which is very good. Okay, so check. We substitute 2 for x and 1 for y. Three times 2 is 6. 5 times 1 is 5. And that checks. We can do the other equation, we have to check them both. It's supposed to be 2, so we replace x by 2. Y is 1. Two times 2 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 and 4 is 8. And we check that off. So now we're sure that we solved the system correctly. Okay, there's another little more complicated operation. So I'm just going to write down any old augmented matrix. Let's keep the numbers a little bit lower. Okay, and this, here's row 1. Here's row 2. Yeah, I don't ordinarily use a fraction here, but, leave myself enough room to write this. Okay, what you do, -3 times row 1 plus 2 times row 2. Just in one step. Now, you might have to do some calculation off to the side. Make sure you keep these aligned and do your calculations off to the side. Okay, now, people did quite well. And you did this, everybody did this in the calculator without writing it out. And I always recommend that you write out a sequence of calculations, okay? So, first of all, okay, here's our first equation. Now, -3 times equation 1. I would write out -3 times equation 1. That'd be -18x plus 12y equals -6. And 2 times equation 2, which would be 18x plus 4y equals -6. And when we add those together, we're going to get 0x plus 16y equals -12. Now, I don't remember who, there were some people got a negative on that 16. And check out why you got a negative. Is it just because, like I did, you just screwed up and wrote the wrong sign without thinking? Okay. You know, I did that with the -22 when I wrote the instructions for reduction of this system of this matrix. So it's easy to do that. That's one of the most common errors, both in computer programming and in mathematics. Okay. But you're going to have 0x minus 16y equals -12. Now, of course, that could have been done just using the numbers. Again, we do row 1 and -3 times row 1 plus 2 times row 2. And we get 6, -4, 2, 0, negative. All right, -16. Okay. See what I mean about writing signs? First place. Okay, -3 times over, it gives us a plus 16. So if I said the -16 was wrong, but I wrote -16, you understand how easy it is to make a sign mistake. Okay, at least easy for me. I don't know about you. And okay, I believe that's all correct. This is correct. This is correct. This must be correct. Okay. Now, let's show one more step on this just for practice. You know, I'll go, instead of writing out the actual equations, I'll just write it out as an augmented matrix. I'm gonna do two things in one step. We do row one divided by 6. And row two divided by 16. And we want to keep things accurate. Some of these divisions are gonna, if you try to write them out as decimals, they're not gonna be exact. So we want to write the numbers here as fractions. If we get fractions, we want to write the fractions. Don't need to worry about reducing them in this step. We can reduce them in the next step. Let's just write the fractions. If I divide row one by 6, I get 1. I get -4/6. And I get 2/6. And I don't need to touch a calculator to do that. Okay? Now, might need to use a calculator to reduce the fractions. Hopefully not, but if you need to, so be it. Okay, so we get 0. And of course, 16 divided by 16 is 1. And -12 divided by 16 is -12/16. Now, I don't have a lot of room, but I think I can write these clearly. That gives me 1, 0. 4 and 6 have a common factor of 2, so you divide 4 by 2 and the 6 by 2. Put the negative in there, you're going to get -2/3. That calculator might reduce these for you, but it's important to know how to reduce fractions. 2/6 is 1/3. And in this row, we get the 0, 1, -12/16. You got a common factor of 4 between the numerator and denominator. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. We get -3/4. Now, there's much more we could do. But this kind of stuff can be very useful. Okay, now you're going to see in open math a little bit more than this, and you're probably going to have some systems of 3 equations in 3 unknowns. We're not going to take time in this support class to do 3 equations in 3 unknowns. Okay. If you have this down, you can do it very efficiently, and you're getting there. Then you should be able to understand what goes on with 3 equations and 3 unknowns. Now I'm kind of having second thoughts about that. I want to start solving a system of 3 equations and 3 unknowns. Just going to do a couple of steps. Okay. So I'm just going to write down a matrix. Okay, now there are 3 rows. I'm going to give you an operation. You do quite well with this. Okay, first of all, row one's gonna stay the same. And now you're gonna do just the same thing you did here. We did -3 times row one plus 2 times row two, and you did so well with that, that I decided on the spur of the moment that I was gonna go ahead and at least begin this, okay? So see what you can do. It's -5 times row one plus row two, -2 times row one plus row three. Quick correction here, I didn't do the 2 times row two. Should have been -5 times row one plus 2 times row two. I apologize for that, that was a plain old error. Okay, now everyone did quite well with that. Especially after I made this correction. -5 times the number in row one is 2. 2 times the number in row, -5. The number in row one is 2, so -5 times that is -10. And 2 times the number in row two is 10. You have -10 and 10, you're gonna get 0. And then you multiply -5 by 4, you get -21. And 2 times -1 gives you -22. -5 times -3 is 15. 2 times 3 is 6. -15 and 6 is -9. And then you get -25 and -2, which is going to give you -27. Okay. Is that what you got? You get? Say yes if you did, no if you didn't, because if you didn't, maybe I made the mistake. You did get that? You get that? Okay, let's see. Let's look again. -5 times row one, -5 times 4 is definitely -20. 2 times row two is 2 times -1, which is -2, -20, and -2 is -22. Okay, -5, oh, I get it. Screwed that one up, didn't I? Is that the one that disagreed? Yeah, this sign thing, -5 times -3 is plus 15. 2 times 3 is 21. Is 6. We get 21. Okay. Now, let's see if I do the arithmetic right here. We get -2 times row one is -4. Do we add row three, which is 4, and that's going to give us 0. That's the main point. By doing these calculations, we get all zeros here. Okay. And we're way over time. So let's just stop in a minute. So -2 times this is 2, and this is 6. So I believe that's going to be 8. -2 times -3 is 6. Added 7, we get 13. -2 times row one is -10, and 2, you get -8. Okay. That's a start. What we do next is we divide this by -22 to get a 1 here. And then we get a 0 here, and then we can solve for Y or Z. Okay. You don't need to worry about that. That's good.